listening to ABC Radio Brisbane.
Prejudice seems to be a constant in the life of many Muslims in Australia. Why? Is there something we can do to change the perception that some people have that Muslims in general are dangerous and to be feared? Fahim Kondaka is a regular on afternoons. He's also on the board of Multicultural Development Australia and an executive committee member of the Islamic Council of Queensland. And during the day, he's a principal advisor in data analytics and insights at BDO. Good afternoon, Fahim.
Hey, mate. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. How do you feel when you hear of these incidents happening?
Sad, but it's become an everyday occurrence for a lot of us, so it's not surprising.
What is that like when it's become an everyday occurrence? Does it mean the bonds have broken down between you and the community? You don't feel part of Australia?
Oh, no, I wouldn't go that far. I think it's just one of those instances. Let's be very clear, though. Muslims in Australia aren't, claiming that our life is the worst on the planet. There's a lot more people who have it a lot tougher than we do. There are people in regional Queensland who just economically have it tougher than a few people attending a mosque, not to belittle anything that's happened to the mosque. So to put that into perspective, it's not like it's overly to the point where everyone's getting depressed about it, but it is sad, and there are some instances where it's quite scary and upsetting, really.
And there's talk of increasing security around mosques. So what will that mean?
In the practical sense, probably security cameras would be the starting point. When it happened yesterday, usually we didn't know what to do. It happened so quickly, people just walked into a mosque and started recording. Fortunately, kids these days are very smart, and everyone's got a smartphone, so they whipped out their smartphones and started recording these guys, right? Yes. So that worked out quite well. Yeah,
the police, I'm sure, are very happy about that. But how frequently do Muslims in Brisbane have to deal with these incidents of prejudice?
Depends who you are. If you sound like me, probably not at all. If you work where I do, probably not at all. If you sound like my parents, probably quite a lot. So I think we struggle as a country to deal with foreign accents. I think it's not a Muslim thing. I think we're just a single language country, and we don't have the diversity in language and audio around town. So I think we struggle with that. So it's easy to pick on those people. I know Muslim women definitely feel it far more than anyone else. Even in that sound clip you just played, Ali's wife felt it. My own wife felt it quite significantly recently as well, so that's quite common.
What happened with your own wife recently?
So my wife's really pretty, right? And she's way, way, way hotter than me, and one day she'll wake up and she'll realise that she can do a lot better than me.
So you're very Australian.
Okay. Batting way above my average.
Yeah.
But we've got 3 beautiful kids, and my wife was pregnant with our 3rd child, probably about 10 months ago now, and she got to the point where she decided, you know what, I'm going to stop wearing the scarf. She didn't wear the scarf her whole life. She only started wearing it 3 years ago, and while she was pregnant with 2 kids in shopping malls, we started hearing more of attacks and abuse that Muslim women were facing, and she didn't want to take the chance of some idiot punching her in the stomach with our baby in her stomach.
Yeah.
And she's also got 2 little kids, and she didn't want to deal with that risk. So she personally made the choice that she's going to stop wearing the scarf, and she stopped wearing the scarf ever since. And even to this day, at home, she says things like, I miss wearing the scarf, because that's something she wanted to do. But from a safety perspective for our children, she's just not going to do it.
Just touching on the importance of the scarf, because, some in the community say it's a liberating thing to take off the scarf. But as you say, your wife wanted to wear it. She enjoyed wearing it. Can you tell us a little bit about what she likes about wearing the scarf?
Yeah, liberating is a personal thing, right? For some people, it's liberating to be away from sight, and for some people it's liberating to be on sight. I think that the key issue there is the choice. And fundamentally, I think 2 blokes talking about whether a woman should wear a scarf or not is probably not, I don't want to take agency away from them. But having said that, I think the most important thing is if we could leave that choice to the individual woman and the ladies, that would probably serve us all quite well. I think if we can agree that everyone should have the freedom to choose what they want to choose or what they want to wear, I think we're making progress.
Do you, apart from your wife, do you ever worry about the safety of other family and friends? parents and things?
Yes and no. Like my mum was quite heavily impacted mentally. She was of the view that psychological impact is quite heavy, especially on first generation parents who came here as migrants and who have children growing up here living lives that they probably don't understand. Like until recently, my dad didn't know what I do for a living, right? I mean, principal advisor of data. Like what the hell is that, right?
Try explaining stand-up comedians.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like all my dad says is he's not a doctor. Yeah. Like okay, so that's normal. Okay, that's normal in our household. But recently he found out. So parents have this, I suppose, a little bit of anxiety of, is my child safe in this country, or is my child safe not in this country, in this environment that we live in this global environment that we live in this day and age. And the world has moved on, not just in Australia, in every country. The world's changing really, really fast. Parents are really struggling to keep up with what their children are getting up to, how the internet works, how all that works. And then this is just yet another layer for Muslim parents to consider.
I hadn't realised that until you put it that way. They're really caught in a wedge because they see us drifting apart from them and they have to face this attack from the wider community as well. It must be a very lonely time. Tell me about some of the impacts that it can have on that generation, including your mum.
The impacts, I think it's one of uncertainty and fear. Muslim community kids are no different to non-Muslim community kids, so we still have adolescents who you'd consider rude to their parents and teenagers that don't listen to their parents and all of that. So that hasn't changed. I think once you add the layer of fear, of serious fear here, like in the context of like the legislation is such with terrorism in particular, is that if your son or daughter gets caught up in the wrong crowd, they could be put away behind bars for a long, long, long time without the same rights as a traditional criminal. So terrorism legislation is much tougher. You can hold people without the right to silence and without the right to a lawyer for up to 2 weeks, if not longer. So all those things kind of play on their minds and the back of their heads. The other thing is, I think, and this is the bit that gets forgotten completely. Let's face it, most Australians are afraid of terrorism, and we should be. But so is the Muslim community, right? Yeah. We kind of have this amazing theory that the Muslim community is somehow immune to the fear of terrorism, because we think, oh yeah, of course they're not scared of terrorism. They're doing it. That's kind of the logic, right? Yeah. And so that's this weird mentality that ignorance, like blissful ignorance that we all live in, that the Muslim community is not fearful of terrorism. So not only have we got terrorism to fear just like everyone else, we've also got the prejudice that comes with being blamed for it, I suppose.
It's interesting because our parents spent thousands of dollars trying to escape the country of their original birth or to create a new life. Yep. And some of them may feel, why am I being tarred with some of the worst elements from my home country?
Yeah, I suppose, but not all the time. I understand that story, and that's probably a significant majority of our populations that come across. Keep in mind, the world's pretty developed now as well. Like my uncle in Bangladesh is probably earning more money than me. So sometimes they're making a choice to come across. The Chinese investors that are investing in Australia, home country is quite lucrative, right? Yes. So it's not always the case that, Australia is this aspirational country that I'm coming for a better life. It's, I've come to Australia because Australia aligns with my values as opposed to I align with Australia's. So that disparity does exist in some cases. But yeah, you're right. We do get, it's the age-old problem with all minority groups that you somehow are seen as a representative of the entire group.
Yes.
And that's the challenge.
That's a fair comment. As a stand-up comedian, all of my Indian cousins are earning more money than me in the developing world.
You should have been a doctor, mate.
Yeah, that's right. Let's come back to perceptions. How do we change some of the perceptions about Muslims from non-Muslims?
Well, firstly, I think we just need to start with looking inward, right? So my question, I suppose, to the non-Muslim Australian communities, put yourself in the Muslim community shoes. What would you have them do in this right now? Like, if your perception of Muslims is a certain way, good or bad, I don't mind, what do you think the Muslim community can do? And then reflect on that and go, is that a fair expectation of a community? Is any other community expected to do that? Yeah. And maybe let's start there. And maybe even go even simpler than that. I think the world media has done a very, very good job in that Islam, the religion, forget Muslim people themselves, has now been somehow portrayed as a bad thing, right? And very few people understand that the only difference between Christianity, Judaism, and Islam is really the final prophet. Like everything else is the same. So Adam, Eve, Abraham, Moses, Noah, all those stories are the same. I went through high school winning the Bible Knowledge Prize, and I've never opened a Bible, right? Because the Quran stories and the Bible stories are exactly the same. Okay, so that sort of similarities, focusing on those similarities and reflecting, just taking a moment to break the cycle of what we listen to on the radio and in the TV, and thinking for ourselves might change the narrative.
And if people want to form more personal connections with Muslims, they might not have any Muslim friends now. What's the easiest way?
Yeah, that's always the tough one, because in Australia, Muslims represent 2.6% of the population. So chances of you actually meeting one and coming across one is quite low, right? 2 out of 100 people may be Muslim.
So you can't just stand outside your doorstep and wait for one to hit, to bump into you.
Yeah, I suppose it also depends on why you want to meet them, the attitude you adopt to them. Because keep in mind, the way the tensions are based on the media perception of Muslims and the relationships that we all have, the moment you reach out and say, hey, I want to talk to a Muslim, every Muslim will probably think, why do you want to talk to me, right? And similarly, if you tell someone that I'm meeting a Muslim, then they get scared as well. Like, I'll give you a perfect example, and I spoke about this on the show. Recently, I ran the Eid Down Under Festival, which is the Muslim version of Christmas, our festival for it. And we paid for someone to dress up as Spider-Man, one of those contracting people. And Spider-Man was scared to walk around a festival full of Muslims, and he actually came in and hid in a tent effectively, and he said, I need security, otherwise I can't walk around.
Worst like Spider-Man. That's ridiculous.
That is Spider-Man is scared. Okay? And that's the extent that we've gotten to, because we are not thinking for ourselves. We're so dissociated from one another. I think the humanness of each group has gone, and we are all on the internet, and we all see each other as digital things and Twitter handles and Facebook names, and we just see each other as things to attack.
You listen to ABC Radio. I'm talking to Fahim Kondakar about trying to build bridges, I guess, between the Muslim and wider community, which seem to have frayed quite a bit in the last few years. Fahim, what about the media representations of Muslims? I watched, I think it was Ali's Wedding, came out recently, and it was just a very normalized story where a person, you get to see the full spectrum of a person, not just their Islamic side. Do you think there's some more work to be done in the media? Yeah,
I don't think we need a specific show. It would be nice to have more normalization of Muslims in everyday shows. I think we all confuse news media as the number one form of media, but just imagine how powerful a Home and Away character or a Home and Away family on Home and Away, the typical story is a Muslim family, and they just fit in and they're just normal, and we just show how boring Muslims are. If we can do that, I think we'll be more successful.
To make Muslims boring.
Yeah, let's do that.
That is a great campaign that we should get into. So I just want to come back quickly. You said there isn't so much of a siege mentality, in Australia. Do you think there's something that could get worse with say, if there was a terror incident or if there was a right-wing extremist group? Do we feel like we're on the crossroads of things getting worse?
I think globally we are, and I think global leadership has kind of failed us politically. It's quite easy to win votes now by not doing it. Because keep in mind, democracy is lovely and we all promote it, right? And you need 51% to win. But the reality is you need 3% to win, because it's the 3% that change the views. The remaining 48% on either side is set in stone. So it's quite easy now to have populist agendas and attack Muslims, or leadership's failing in that sense politically. Where the opportunity, I think, is for everyday grassroots people to reach out and say, you know what, I'm going to think for myself. I'm not going to just take it wholeheartedly. If you tell me a tweet says Muslims are bad, I'm not going to believe them. I'm going to challenge it, essentially. The best thing Donald Trump has done is he's talked about this notion of fake news. Now, for the first time ever, everybody looks at Facebook and goes, if they see a statement on Facebook, people are at least considering, is that real or not? Okay. And I think the more we do that, the more we start breaking through that barrier and thinking for ourselves, I think we'll figure it out.
Okay. So you're not really worried about the populism. Are you hopeful, I guess is what I'm asking. Are you hopeful for where we're going?
You have to be. I've heard this amazing saying that it's going to be okay in the end. And if it's not okay, it's not the end. So it will be fine. People are fundamentally good people. It's the humanity that we need to shine. And
so, non-Muslim Australians, can we turn up to a mosque?
Of course. So mosques, there are about 14 mosques in Brisbane. If you just Google mosques, you can find one or two. Just don't show up like these guys have with a camera and ask questions like, are you a cult religion or things like that? But if you're genuinely curious and you want to go visit a mosque, there are lots of mosques open. There's a SBS TV show that we produced at the Islamic Council of Queensland called The Mosque Next Door. You can download it on SBS On Demand. And we literally let SBS in our mosques for 365 days, 24/7 recording. And we made 3 episodes of that. So that was really good.
Are there any groups that non-Muslims can join?
Yes, so I run one, and if you don't mind, I'll mention it. So there's a professional networking group we run in the Brisbane city called Crescent Institute. We host 3 networking events a year, majority Muslim professionals. If you want a soft entry, that's probably a good place.
Yeah.
We're hosting Senator Bob Carr, the former foreign minister, at our next event on the 26th of July.
Yes.
So Crescent Institute is a nice way. It's in a CBD location. You just come in for after work and just chat and meet a few more Muslims.
Fahim Kondakar, thanks for joining us and sharing such an interesting story and account of how we can build bridges.
No worries. Thanks, mate.